Um, Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Indigenous Peoples Days listening circle, which is held by the Indigenous Hub by the GARN. Today, we're commemorating the Day of Indigenous People, our struggles, but also our victories, our stories. And before handing over to Julian, there's been an announcement that we've been very happy to receive, that is that the Ponca Nation has recognized the rights of river in their nation. And Casey, which is a part of the Indigenous Hub, is an environmental ambassador of the Poncas. So we're very happy to hear that. As I was saying, we're just gonna have a very casual but engaging conversation today with Julian Matthews, and later on I will bring in some other members of the Indigenous Hub. But we'd love to hear from you, Julian, what you're doing, what progress there's been, what challenges you've had, and you also mentioned that you've had some success and progress when it comes to tribal law, and would love to hear about that too. So the floor is yours, and you can share about your work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me to talk. And I think this is this movement, I guess, well, like an Indigenous or an Indian country call it in the States, is really growing. And so, like I was telling some people before, when I'm enrolled as Perce member of the Nimipu, that means the people in our language, Nimipu Timt, and but they misnamed us Nez Perce because they thought we had pierced noses. But like I tell people, I've never seen any of my relatives with pierced noses. So, but I guess they call whatever they want to Indigenous groups. So anyway, I first started working on this. Right at first, the first thing we did was rights to rivers, is called, because we're having a big issue with dams, forest dams on the Snake River, where the salmon that we fish for, my great grandparents did, their great grandparents fished for thousands of years along this river, along the Snake River, which begins, the Columbia goes to the ocean near Portland, and then the tributaries into the Snake River, and then goes up the Clearwater River into the Selway and salmon and these rivers where the fish come and spawn, and then they're supposed to be able to go back to the sea for the fish, trying to go back and forth. And so I had met with Earth Law Institute, Grant Wilson and Elizabeth, the couple of people that were working on this. They worked with some other tribes, other governments on this issue. And so I started talking to them about it. And then we started working on Elliot Moffat and I, some other people, started working on the rights of rivers, because it was really critical that we look at how can we, as a tribe and as Indigenous, protect this river and the salmon and everything that lives in it and needs the water. And so we started working on the rights of rivers. We went to our tribal council, and the tribes in the U.S. they have a bylaws and constitution. So we have 9 Nez Perce Tribal Executive Committee members are elected, 3 every year. And so they're the governing body of the tribal government. And so we went to them, did a resolution to to propose the rights of rivers. And so we passed that last year. And so it turned out pretty cool, because the chairman, he said they're going to send us a memo, because our group, Nimipu Protecting the Environment, had proposed it, sent a memo to us saying that they're going to use, and out to the general public, that they're going to use that rights of rivers in all their litigation and all their memos and all their type of communication, PR, as a way to show that they respect the rivers and want to protect the rivers. And so we haven't codified that into tribal law and order code. We have our own, like the tribal government has, like any government, their own law and order code. We are still working on that. We have to get, because we have a couple of people working on that in our group. So, and then we also proposed our rights of nature, or I think it was rights of Mother Earth, or rights of nature, I believe. And so we put that in last year. We haven't really gone back into the council, but we'll probably do that pretty soon to see what they're doing with that, because that was kind of more of an all-encompassing of the rights of nature, or Mother Earth, the water, the land, the trees, the animals and everything. So we're trying to look at ways, because with our tribe and our membership, we want to make sure that, there's wolves involved, there's grizzly bears now. And the biggest problem that we've seen and what we're trying to prevent is the slaughter of the wolves, the grizzly bears, or anything that the non-Indians or Soyapo, as they call them, that they don't like. They want to graze cattle, and the wolves will eat the cattle, eat the deer and elk. And the state doesn't like that because they're making money off the tags and licenses and all that kind of stuff, guns, ammo. And so we're trying to look at ways, and the rights of nature or Mother Earth was one way that we could look at it holistically and spiritually. The big thing with us, or with me and my group, is that it's a spiritual connection. Like I always believe that we're a part of this. We're not the lords of the nature. We don't own it, or not the masters of nature. And that's one thing. A couple of months ago, I went to our council when we were talking about this and asked them. I says, well, who owns that river, or who owns those salmon? And they just said nothing, because no one does. But it seems to me like what we're trying to get at is that the federal government, U.S. federal government, who we have a treaty with, that we ceded millions of acres of land to protect and retain rights to hunt, fish, and gather, they seem to feel they own it and they can do whatever they want with it, whether it's dams or salmon. The salmon, like my cousin was talking today, we have 2 fish runs this year, and they're 2 days long. Before, there were so many salmon, we could fish anytime the run was occurring. And so now these issues are really becoming paramount to us and to the future. My main thing is looking towards the future. Like, we have this kids program every Wednesday during the school year. And, I don't want to be the one that, lost the salmon fishing to, 50 years from now. We'll say, what was Julian doing when all this was going on? What happened to the river? How come the dams are still there, and stuff like that? So that's what we're really trying to look at, ways to protect Mother Earth, the water, the land, particularly for our traditional digging, hunting, fishing, and gathering rights that we've had over the, millenniums. And so that's what we're mainly doing now. And so we have those 2 big issues: the dam breaching and the protection of four-leg is within our treaty territory, are really critical. And I know, with the state, it's like any other area where the state and the federal governments come in and they want to dictate to the people. And so that's our big battle too, with fighting back, saying we have, these animals and fish have rights too. And we don't want to just say that, oh, well, you guys can do what you want and we'll just sit back and take what we get, basically. And because I don't believe in that. We have to have a real strong stand, push back, and against any government that tries to deny or reduce our treaty rights. And so that's our big battle now. And so we've been doing pretty good, a lot of support, working with other non-Indian groups on the river and other issues, working with some groups on the wolves and the grizzly bears, because it seems like when you have like water or rivers, or it seems like they get these corporations or governments. Because I talked to a group of Vietnamese. There's like 40 kids. We did a Zoom with interpreters. It was really interesting, because it seems like the government or corporations always want to go into the, like, say with our tribe and say, hey, we'll create a bunch of jobs, put these dams in, or do whatever, and we'll hook you up, we'll give you money. And so that's another issue that we have to work on, is our own government, to make sure that our own tribal government is not succumbing to, monetary, hey, we'll give you a bunch of money. What about the jobs it creates? And this will be really good, because I think in the past, a lot of that, particularly with the way Indians were treated before, they were put on reservations and, just given trashy land and no development. And so they always, like, some tribes have been subject to different groups coming in, even like oil drilling, fracking, and that type of stuff. So it's a lot of times we not only have to fight our own tribal government, but the other governments. So, but right now with our tribal council, we're doing pretty good. They're pretty supportive. My good friend is the vice chair, and the other ones are pretty supportive. So, but one thing too I found overall is you got to get the grassroots involved. Like, that's why we meet with the tribal people. We work with the kids, because, like, say if you just go into the tribal council, say, hey, we should do this and that, they'll say, well, you got 2 people here, so we don't really care. I mean, they may not say that, but that's how it's implied, But once we get a bunch of voters behind us, like tribal members, then that's really what helps us. And now I think the tribal council realized we do have good support, because we table at all the meetings. We talk about our issues at the general council meetings. Those are 2 annual meetings where they have a lot of tribal members come, because we can vote and we can bring up issues with the tribal councils. So we kind of learned the system, and so we're doing pretty good. But like I say, it really helps to get out the word to the people, and get all the people. For us, tribal members, Nez Perce tribal members involved, within our reservation or within our treaty area. And we've been using social media. And when we first started the group, I didn't even have a Facebook account, but people helped me set one up, and so now I'm pretty used to that. We take photos and print articles on current issues that we're dealing with. So, but that's pretty much the whole gist. And if you want to check out what we're doing, it's Nimipu Protecting the Environment. We have a Facebook and nimipuprotecting.org. Those are our two social media. And we have Twitter and stuff, but I don't really use that much. So anyway, I think with, and there's a lot of assistance, like Earth Law Institute will help people with the developing the resolutions. And like they're telling us before, we need to have it codified, kind of like.
Oh, I think we might have lost Julian again. Let's see if we can get him back in the next couple of minutes. Just to pick up on where Julian was, I think he made some really great points when it comes to Indigenous people and our role in the protection of these ecosystems. In his case, the river, the salmon, and I think how this translates to rights of nature is many times kind of making sense of our spirituality for people that have not been connected to the land or that are non-Indigenous, kind of translating this ancestral knowledge that's been kept in our cultures from our elders, and then putting it into the documents and kind of the judicial system, even if it's tribal or, for example, national, which it is in my country here in Ecuador. And that he mentioned also was that Indigenous people many times have tribal laws or even constitutions, and this is a huge part of our autonomy that we need the governments to recognize and to respect. So if we do recognize rights of nature, rights of rivers in our own constitutions, in our own communities, and that they already have been for years and years, the only thing that the governments can and should do is respect that. And I think that is a work that we within our communities already are doing. I'd love to get other people involved in the conversation. We have Atik here with us. Quedarte un ratito con nosotros a conversar. We would love to have you engaging in this conversation while we wait for Julian to come back. I can, for example, share that my own community, Sarayaku, we in the last couple of years have been working on a legal proposal, but not just a legal proposal, but a proposal for Indigenous governance, which is tied to our spirituality and us recognizing the rights of nature in our own communities. And it's called Kausaksacha, which is translated to English as the living forest. And the living forest cosmovision and philosophy recognizes the forest as living, but not only the animals and the plants, but also recognizing that there are spiritual beings and protectors in the forest. and that the mountains are living, the rivers, the lagoons. And this is the fundamental piece in why my community has been so persistent and devoted to the protection of the Amazon and of our community. And last week, we held this big gathering where all indigenous peoples, nations from the Amazon and Ecuador, and even Peru attended this gathering in my community, and we signed the Sarayaku Accord, which is our commitment to protect the living forest and to seek our own ways of governance in our communities that are autonomous and that are not bound by the national government. And I think this is a huge step in looking for autonomous, but also recognizing the rights of nature, and recognizing our own philosophy and cosmovision. Atik, are you able to join us?
Sure.
Hola.
Hello.
Hola.
Hi.
Hola. How are you? Yeah, I think that I come from I guess a younger generation sometimes in these conversations, and I mean I grew up with a lot of elders around me, but I wanted to know, because there's a lot of times that the indigenous knowledge or even our traditions and our cultures are threatened in many territories. We're losing sometimes the sense of identity, and this is also a threat to the protection of our territories. So what would you say are tools that we can use so that this is not lost? And how do you transmit, for example, the knowledge around the rights of nature, or in my case, a living forest, to younger generations, or even to people and audiences that have not heard this before? Because sometimes people have a really hard time understanding what are rights of nature or what is protective being. They have a really hard time understanding. So what do you think could be tools for us to transmit that to other people?
Yeah, that's a big trouble, because always when we are talking with some other friends or people, we're really worried about the big problem is the the I forgot the word. The big problem is how treat is the mother nature, and we are talking about what we are doing to save them, and we are not doing. We feel that we are not doing. We are not doing too much things, and we think it's not enough what we are doing, but we always get some words and say every little step that we are taking, it eventually it's going to be it's going to get a big transformation and get something big. The first step is sharing what do you know, share your knowledge, and share to other people maybe that is not maybe is worried but do not have the conviction to, and they don't feel the what we feel or the connection that we have with mother nature. And so then if we share what is the importance to, what important is the nature for us, I think eventually the people gets I don't know, maybe eventually they're going to have a little connection, not like us, but little, and that is a start. I think that's really important. It's not just, I read the other day, I read something that said, the change, it's impossible to get just by one person. You need to communicate and share and try to do with other people and make some strong because lonely is kind of difficult to do. All right. I also want to talk about the date. Is I think in our culture we have many other important days that we can celebrate as indigenous peoples. But I think the important here is the true meaning that we are giving to this day. It's not just celebrate indigenous people, you know, it's try to commemorate our our resistance, our historical resistance, and try to think no organization, what the governments are doing for us and for our struggles that we have in our territories. Because if we talk just to celebrate us, or just to commemorate us, I think that has to it's not really the important. Yeah, we are not giving the importance that this they have. So I think that is really important. What is the true meaning that we are giving to this day?
Yes, I totally agree with you. I think it's you raised such an important point of there are so many other days that are so much more important to us actually than Indigenous Peoples Day, but just because it's this worldwide day that other people know of, suddenly it's really, really important. And as you say, maybe this is a day that is more important on an institutionalized level, even a more political level, whereas for us, you know, for you maybe Inti Raymi is much more fun and important, and for me it would be Pachamama or Uyansa and all these celebrations that we have. And I think, how do you think we can redefine or make sure that Indigenous Peoples Day is what we need it to be? So what should we strive for? What should this day look like for you? What does this represent for you?
I think it's like it's a day that how do you, as you said, that institutional, the ING said. I think it's a day when we can analyze and try to no understand, try to analyze what the ONG are doing or what the governments are doing for us. I think is that we at this day we're looking for some changes and what we are what we got until this day. Okay, and what changes for us? I think it's a day to think about it as indigenous people and try to find a way to the next day, to the next year, what we're going to do for get that goals that we're having.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, to see, also kind of measure what work has been done next year and next year when they I guess something that I've also always felt, even if it's, you know, for me Pachamama or Uyansa, in your case Inti Raymi, or even Indigenous Peoples Day, is that many times there's actually very little awareness around these days and what it means. And I think often it is around us, very close to Indigenous communities, is where there is most disinformation or no information about these events. How has it been in your experience? What do you feel like that outside world kind of has? Is there interest? Is there support? What do you feel around these days?
I didn't hear it. Can you repeat me, please?
Yeah, so many times there's a lot of disinformation or no information around the celebrations that we have in our communities, or days like Indigenous Peoples Day. How has it been in your experience? Do people around you know about the day, or what has your experience been around that, or are they acknowledging that this day is happening?
Like equinox or some, what the people
Well,
out.
yes, well, that too, like either Inti Raymi or Indigenous Peoples Day. Do people know that it's happening around you? I mean, for example, people that are not part of your community.
You know, here it's a kind, we have a problem. Okay, they know that the important that days are really important for us, but a lot of people trying to gather with us and share it with us, but they doesn't know the mean that they have. um I think that's our work, to try to teach them and share our knowledge, and share that what's the real mean, what's the real mean that they have. Because of course they celebrate with us, but they does not have the same feeling that we are having in that day. But I think it's that is progressing, because years ago it was a kind how do you say, it was a kind of, the people does not have the same respect that they're having now. I think I can't say there's a lot, but it's a little bit there. It's something are changing here. I think that's happening.
Yeah, completely. I think that that happens a lot, even if it's our celebrations or everything. There's a kind of the sense of yeah, a lot of disinformation and maybe not knowing the meaning of what it actually means to us, and there's a need of raising awareness around that. Going back to the rights of nature, and my first question on how do we explain and share this with other people, what connection do you make with Indigenous people and rights of nature, the legal proposal that there is around the world, and now that Ecuador, our country, already has in our constitution?
I think we should communicate to the world, and try to make them understand the real how deep is the connection that the indigenous people have with Mother Nature, and how important is this connection, because we are historical guardians of the Mother Nature, and this is not just it's not just it's not just a job, or it's or something like that. This is how we live. This is how deep is our connection. It's how we must to do. It's defend and trying to conserve the Mother Nature. I think they're just really important to to uh, to make them, the governments make understand them, because they think that we're just having the, I don't know, how do you say it? Sorry, I forgot the word.
Say them in Spanish if you want to.
Sí, es que ellos piensan que no se dan, que no hay esa importancia dentro de los gobiernos, o sea, que no, they don't make us participate on the government decision, and this must to be changed, because we are have to participate in every decision that the government takes around the mother nature. I think it should be like that.
Definitely, that's very true. I think they a lot of time have they don't really understand because they can't feel, because they have not put their feet on the soil. They've never been to the places that we grew up in, so they don't understand because they can't feel that connection. And I completely agree with you.
They
We
just
thought that, yeah.
they just see the mother nature as resources, and they don't see it as mother nature, that the real, the true meaning that they have.
Exactly. We were expecting to have Julian with us here, but we engaged in a very interesting conversation with Atik. Before we were gonna close a little bit earlier than we thought, but before we do that, before we wrap up, Atik, I wanted to ask you, what future challenges are you seeing right now when it comes to for Indigenous people, rights of nature, or even specifically for Ecuador with the current government? What difficulties are you expecting this year or next year in your territory? And is there anything people can do? How can we engage in the work that you're doing? Tell us.
¿Aló?
Te escuchamos.
Yeah.
Dale, adelante.
I think the the actual struggles that we have, or the big problem that we have, is against companies. And I think in all our indigenous territories, we have struggling with against the companies, you know, and we have to make pressure in the government that necesitamos hacerles presión a los gobiernos para que ellos no, para que ellos empiecen a hacernos partícipes dentro de esto, pero también necesitamos hacer presión dentro de nuestros propios gobiernos como pueblos indígenas para que el camino y todo el plan que tengamos de trabajo trazado no cambie en el transcurso, porque hablamos de que queremos tener una participación, pero que una vez que tengamos la participación, tenemos que mantenernos firmes dentro de lo que queremos. O sea, no permitir que cambien las estrategias que ya se habían planteado con todos los demás compañeros. Eso es que...
Voy a traducir eso.
Sí.
So yes, but you've been doing amazing until this point, but thank you for sharing that too. So Atik is saying that we need to put pressure on our government so that we can be able to participate in the decision-making tables that are going on, that the governments are having, but that we also need to make sure that to put pressure on our own indigenous-led governments or leaders, so that the years and years of work that has been done won't change root, and that the strategies that we've set up for years and years don't change, because this is a collective work that's been done for many, many years, and we don't want that to take a root now. And that's a very relevant point right now, because of course there is disagreement within our own communities and within our own leadership, within our own organizations, and that is, you know, it's up to us, members of these organizations and communities, to make sure that we all, you know, stay on the same path and route as we've always wanted to. So thank you for sharing that, Atik. I don't know if you have any last words, something you would like to share with us.
I'm really happy to be here and share with you.
Okay.
I'm really
Thank you so much. I'm really sorry that Julian couldn't be with us. I had expected a very interesting conversation with him around tribal law and the rights of river on his nation and on his territory, but we also got to talk to Atig, which has brought us very valuable insight, and we've had a very interesting talk with Atig today. So I guess, do you say Happy Indigenous Peoples Day? I think that's really strange to say, but yes, let's celebrate this day as this important day that it is in many ways, maybe not culturally, but it is on a more political and institutionalized level. So thank you, Atik, for being with us here today.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone who's been online and who's been watching. Thank you.
Recording stop.